The topic I'm presenting this afternoon is on organizational integrity and its relationship with management systems and enterprise risks. My name is Ayo Ogunkoya. I'm the Principal HSC and Risk Management Consultant for Generative HSC Inc. With presence in Canada right now, and hopefully within the next 1 year, we'll be making our presence in Africa. And I'm a strong believer of science, and what we try to do at Generative HSC is to interject science into management systems and to help corporations achieve high organizational integrity. This afternoon, I'll be taking us through what's really organizational integrity is all about, the relationship between organizational structure and organizational integrity, management systems and organizational integrity, as well as enterprise risk and organizational integrity. How these frameworks impact the overall organizational integrity. And just one slide, I'll be discussing benefits of a well-established OI, which is organizational integrity. I know we're all wondering why this topic. After all, most of this group would be auditors and people that develops management system or people that implement management systems. The world is experiencing a crisis right now that we are not paying attention to. In the last 30, 40 years, we've added over 1 billion human population, 1 billion. So to put this in perspective, we're looking at 1 million in 1,000 places of people. And in spite of that, we have noticed that the trend, there's an inverse proportionality between population growth rate and employment rate. So basically, when we were not that much, there was increased employment rate. But now that we're over 7 billion, we realize that a lot of businesses are shutting down. Specifically in Canada, within a 10-year span, it was recorded that over 10,000 businesses went solvent. I was watching a YouTube video not too long ago, and I didn't actually get the actual number of openings this company has to offer, probably less than 100 in Dubai. And there were over 5,000 applicants from all over the world. 5,000 applicants. So the question is, what's your chance of getting that job? So why this topic? Because we need to increase organizational sustainability. More organizations need to survive, even post-crisis phase. We just can't afford to lose more businesses. Otherwise, this crisis, we get into the alarming phase where it's already, I don't think we can argue that, because we see the presence of terrorist acts everywhere. People are becoming idle because they don't have a job. They divert their time to something else. So it is a crisis phase. But how do we deal with this? So I'm looking at how we can deal with this to increase survival rate of organization through management system, through reducing their risk exposures. So those are the views that I'm sharing with you this afternoon. To reverse this trend, in addition to increase the establishment of new enterprises, the need to increase organizational sustainability is highly imperative, which is what I just said earlier on. As contributory effort to achieve this, today's presentation is focused on organizational integrity. There's a gentleman known by Guido Palazzo by name. He defined organizational integrity as the ethical integrity of the individual actors, the ethical quality of their interactions, as well as the dominating norms, activities, decision-making procedures, and results within a given organization. At Generative HSC, we feel like this is limiting in definition. So here is our belief. We believe organizational integrity is the overall outcome of collective efforts of the entire organization as directed by its top management towards self-governance that seems to stem from internal and external ethical standards as adopted and implemented within the organization or enterprise. I'll leave you with this for just a moment to ruminate over this before I continue the presentation. So what are some of the composites? And I just want to quickly say this, that by no means that whatever I'm presenting is exhaustive in nature. It's always an evolving area. So I'll just give you some of the ideas based on the findings of our research and also my personal belief as the head of the organization. We believe that moral standard, which is more of an individual-based index. So moral standard varies from individual to individual. If you have a high moral standard as a CEO, it will reflect on the organization that you lead. Ethics. Ethics is more of the group standard. For regulating bodies, they come up with what we all know as code of ethics to guide the performance of its members towards achieving a high integrity. Legal framework drives this as well, because when laws are promulgated, they expect that people or organizations will comply with those laws. And that can also be a driver to achieving higher organizational integrity. Social factor, the public that the organization serve, you cannot underestimate the power that they have over the organization, the success of organizations, especially when you talk about public outrage in the face of crisis. Lastly, I'll talk on competence. The way we view competence, there are three arms to competence: the educational background of the professional, the training, specific training to the area that is being evaluated, and the years of experience that that person brings to the table. These are components of competence. And if you have highly competent professional, it is not unusual for you to have a decent or world-class management system if you have the right people developing your management system. So now we want to look at, for the purpose of this conversation, I would want us to classify organizational integrity into high organizational integrity and low organizational integrity. Whichever level you want to achieve as an organization, these are four key drivers that can impact that outcome. The decisions that are made, the actions that are taken, the decisions that are not made, and the actions that are not taken. So, as risk prevention, we expect that the organization, the top management will make certain decisions that will be beneficial to the organization. But it's not always the case. Sometimes they focus too much on bottom line as a measure of profitability, which is not true. Because a lot of organizations will still not survive the years to come. You might ask me why. And I'll tell you what. Two reasons. Some organizations, they are still stuck in the concept of profit maximization. That's an old school of thought. The world has moved and continued to advance towards profit optimization. There's difference. And that is where you now have things like CSR, corporate social responsibility, come into play, increased penalties and stuff like that, which I will still talk about later on in the presentation. So for any organization to survive, whether before crisis phase, during crisis phase, or post-crisis, they have to have a plan in place. They have to be held to higher standards. So that's what this presentation is about. I've got four different incidents here, 4 of them, and they all had 4 different outcomes. 3 of them are similar. I remembered in 2001, I was in a city called Abuja in Nigeria, which happens to be the federal capital territory of that nation. And before my eyes, I saw the Twin Towers on CNN coming down. To be honest with you, I actually thought it was a movie. That was what I thought. But then when I stayed and I listened to the news, I realized that this is reality playing out right in front of us. But unfortunately, the head of EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency for the US, I will never forget, because I followed all these incidents, and the outcome still played vividly in my memory till this day. I can still see the lady, the individual, saying that the quality of air around this area is safe to breathe. Behind her, we can see building crumbling and smoke, and you are saying that it's safe to breathe. So what the emergency responders did was that some of them were not wearing masks. They weren't putting on the right PPEs. So what happened? A lot of them ended up with cancer. Hundreds of them are late now. They died. The head of EPA was prosecuted. She lost her job. We are very familiar with this one. Very, very familiar with this one. I was watching the news every day. I wanted to see how soon and how fast they're going to end this spill, because it's on a global scale. And I watched the CEO of this organization, BP at the time. He came on TV and he said, while they were trying to scoop some of the spill, he said, we ensure that our employees are safe to do the job they are asked to do. These guys had minimum PPE on. And they were showing that at the background, and he's making that statement. So as public, why I'm saying this is, as public, what view do you have of that organization when the CEO is seeing something different and something else is playing out? And that's what really, because what we found out is not the crisis that actually hurts the organization. It's the way the crisis is managed and the external communication, how it's done. These are the 2 factors that really hurts organization, and they can actually make or break the organization. They can determine whether that organization is going to survive or not. United Airlines, very, very fresh on our minds. Someone paid for the seat. He's expected to be at his destination at X amount of time. He was dragged off the aircraft. The first thing the CEO, the first letter, if we all remember, that the CEO sent was that we value our employee. We value our employee. Lastly, this is the one I prefer the most, because Maple Leaf had an incident in 2008 of listeriosis. Do we still all remember? Do we remember? 2008. There was fatality involved. But the CEO came out and he apologized. He said, we are sorry. Not just the words that he said, but the way he said it. And you can tell as a member of the public that this guy really meant what he said. For any organization, during the crisis phase, you will experience dollar losses. That's a given. However, the recovery phase, how soon do you start to recover from that crisis? Maple Leaf, within a matter of probably weeks, then the stock started rising again. They quickly recovered. So the best approach in all of these incidents, the best approach was learned from Maple Leaf. Again, let us remember that we're talking about sustainability of organization, how we can help organizations to survive. So having the highest level of organizational integrity does not absorb or guarantee an organization from experiencing loss. However, it does minimize the chance of loss occurrence. It does minimize the chance of loss occurrence. So now let's look at the relationship between organizational structure and OI. The people your organization have in key roles, are they good fit for that role, or are they misfit? Are you trying to fit in or forcefully fit in a square peg in a round hole? Or do you realize that there's a better way of doing things and you can actually fit a round peg in a round hole? What's the choice your organization is making? Given that decision making and action taking are key drivers of high organizational integrity, hence the structure of the organization should be in such manner that decision makers have easy access to information required for objective decision making in real time. In real time. In real time. I'm happy that Faton alluded to some of this earlier on when he indirectly alluded to organizational structure. So whether a very large organization with complex pyramidal or tall organizational structure, or small organization with flat organizational structure, the essence is what kind of information does the person that is going to make that call, what kind of information does he or she receive? And the quality of that information. So this is a flat on the upper side there, that's the flat organizational structure. And here is the pyramidal or tall organizational structure. So the risk management department of any organization should have a direct reporting to the CEO. So what I'm saying here is, if you have the head of risk management department, by the way, looking at the enterprise risk management model, there are 4 arms, taking us back to ERM 101. There are 4 parts to it. There's the hazard risk, there's the operational risks, there's the strategic risks, and there's the financial risks. So looking at strategy, because decision making falls under strategic risks. So if you have the head of the risk department or the HSC department here reporting to this guy, and this guy reports to this guy, and this guy reports to this guy, you have about 3 layers. That was what Phantom was talking about earlier on, more layers. By the time the actual information gets to this guy who's going to make the call, it's a different information he's getting. But if you decide to make this guy report directly to this guy or this lady, then the decision being made is based on facts. There's no intermediary there. That's the role that organizational structure can, that's how it can impact organizational integrity. Management systems. There are some of the objectives that management systems intend to achieve. 1, for the organization to conform to its internal standards. For the organization to conform to external standards, which would be like the ISOs and the likes. For the organization to be able to comply to legislative requirements, and above all, to help the organization to prevent losses, either through risk prevention strategies or through risk reduction strategies. So at Generative HSC, this is our belief. That's the hypothesis, that there is a direct proportionality between management system quality and organizational integrity. So basically what we're saying is, if you reduce the quality of your management system, regardless of the management system we're talking about here, this is more generic. If you reduce the quality of the system, and by the way, the system will encompass all the 4 arms of continual improvement. We'll get there shortly. So if you reduce the quality of your management system, you likely reduce organizational integrity. And if you increase that, that's the correlation, you will increase the organizational integrity. So the overall quality of the management system is dependent on the quality and interactions of each phase of the continual improvement cycle, which we all know as the Deming cycle. So basically what we're saying is, for you to have a very high quality management system, all this have to interact. They have to be high quality independently, and they also have to be high quality collectively. So what do we mean by this? Because you know what, I've had so many chats with professionals, and what I found is that everyone seems to have different opinion of what this actually means. We believe that plan, the tangible product for this particular phase, is to have MS manual. So whether it's you're looking at ISO 14001, the organization ends up with environmental management system manual. The organization needs to implement the manual. They have to do what they say they want to do. Check simply refers to audit. And I'll stop right here for a moment. Audit. Audit. The quality of audit. The quality of audit and the objectives of the auditor will significantly impact the organizational integrity of any organization. Because this is an opportunity, although we've seen some organizations, they've used it as a tool to victimize their employee. But that's not the goal. By no stretch, that is not the goal. The goal is to catch areas of improvement and go back to the drawing board, corrective action and preventive actions being implemented. That's the goal of audits, which we all know. Enterprise risk versus organizational integrity. A lady called Lynn Payne in the Harvard Business Review said this. That's not my statement. In 1994, we find that this is still valid till date. But the red statement here, incorporated into this whole statement, is what we believe, that this increase is a continuum. So she said, organizations can quickly become entangled in an all-consuming web of legal proceedings. The risk of litigation and liability has increased in the past decade. She said this in 1994. She said this in 1994. By the way, I'll take us back a little bit to that BP incident. Deep Horizon incident cost BP over $55 billion. I always like to put things in perspective. So basically, $1 million in 55,000 places. That's insane. They survived that, and to be honest with you, the survival of BP, in my opinion, is still questionable. Because the only reason why they survived that was because they have a deep pocket. To any organization, that's enough to crumble that organization. And the cost of liability and the consequence of incidents, the penalty involved, they keep increasing. And if we go through this trend, and we know that BP is a major player, they employ thousands of people. But when their sustainability is in question, then we should be worried about that organization, because we play a role in the survival of organizations. We do. As auditors, we play a role, a key role. So as laws makers, I've legislated new civil and criminal offenses, stepped up penalties, and improved support for law enforcement. That's what she said in 1994. We still hold this statement valid till this day. And it's still going to be valid, I tell you, in the next 20, 50 years. So in terms of the relationship, again, this is another hypothesis, part of our beliefs at Generative HSC. That organizational integrity, that there's an inverse proportionality between organizational integrity and enterprise loss exposures. That when an organization increases its level of integrity, when it lowers, rather, the level of integrity, it increases its loss exposure. And if you increase your organizational integrity, you reduce your loss exposure. Remember what I said earlier on, that high level of organizational integrity does not absorb or guarantee loss. However, it significantly reduces loss exposures. So here's another belief that we have at Generative HSC. Organizational integrity is classified as a strategic risk. Remember the ERM 101, the four arms of risks? It is a strategic risk, which is a form of speculative risk. We can subdivide those four into two. There's speculative risk and there's pure risk. In the grand scheme of things, however, it is largely influenced by pure risks. So if I simplify this, what I'm saying is, when we look at the BP incident, it falls under the realms of hazard risks. That's the incident. Because there was safety infraction that was involved, people died, and there was oil spill aspect of it, which is environmental. Both of those incidents in one incident or crisis phase, they fall under hazard risk, which is a pure form of risk. However, the outcome is a form of speculative risk. Because when the CEO was communicating external communication again, when he was doing the communication, it was flawed. For the good thing that I have to say here is that BP learned big time from it because of the big blow. And that caused BP to restructure the organization. But then the question is, do they have to wait till that time? Do they really have to experience that loss? Do we know how many people $55 billion will put to work? Again, sustainability of an organization. I did mention this earlier on, that it's a form of risk prevention strategy and also a risk reduction strategy. So I wouldn't hold us too long on that. So finally, two more slides, then I would take questions before we go to our lovely break. Another hypothesis. We believe that there's a direct proportionality between organizational integrity and organizational sustainability. So basically what that means is, if we increase organizational integrity, we will increase the survival rate of organizations. The time and the period when top management decision makers can lie to the public is gone. You have to present the facts when you know it. That adds value to your organization. So basically, to wrap it up, this is our take-home message. A well-established organizational integrity increases sustainability of that organization. It helps you to survive over time. It reduces loss exposures. It does. It increases profitability. Remember, for those of us here that are grounded in economics, I'm not an expert by no means, by no stretch of it. We know that profit is an inverse of loss. Profit is an inverse of loss. So it increases profitability, and also it increases employee retention. Because the guys that work for you, they are so happy that you actually have their back. They are so happy that they know that they can trust you. They know that the decision that you are going to make is going to favor them and the end user of their products. So that helps with increased retention. Ladies and gentlemen, this ends this presentation. And I'm hereby opening my chest to receive the bullets. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
You mentioned talking about integrity, and one of the things we see in the UK, one of the talk breach, and
Sorry, I can hardly hear you.
so when we talk about integrity,
Yeah.
we had the talk breach, where a SQL injection, let me say a hacker, used SQL injection to publish customer information. Now, the CEO went into, I think it was Sky News, and she was asked questions on how would they protect customer information, and she couldn't really answer. Now, I'm likening it to that example you've shown about, when someone top management goes to the media. What's the best way to equip those guys with intelligence so that obviously there's minimal brand damage? Because it seems that when they go in the front, they don't really know what's happening behind them, or they don't have enough. Who's supposed to equip them with the knowledge to speak to the press?
Thank you for that question. I'm not too familiar with that particular incident, but there's what we call incident command strategy or incident ICS model. So, which means that every organization should anticipate crisis. And when you anticipate it, you should have a plan in place. And when you have a plan in place, just like we do fire drills, you should test your plan if it's going to work. In the ICS model, there are subject experts. So these are the people that should have the direct communication to whoever is going to go to the media. They should tell them what they know, not what they think. It should be fact-based. Once they have those information, you are equipping these individuals that is representing the organization in front of the media. 2, it should not be an emotional response. It should not be an emotional response. It's not because, oh, something happened now, you know what, we have to go to the media in the next 1 or 2 days. No. I hope we're all on the same page on this. If I don't have an idea of what's going on, there's nothing wrong in not knowing. But you need to find out the information when you don't know. So you go back to the people that are supposed to provide information to you. Someone like myself, I still do field work. I believe so much in it. I believe in learning. I still learn till this day. I always call myself a perpetual student. There's nothing wrong in asking. So those CEOs, they may feel, just like Faton again said in one of his slides, that arrogance, people feel that they know it all. When they go, then that's when they realize that they don't know. And then the damage is already done because probably over 5 or probably over 2 billion people are watching. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
I wanted to add to what she's saying, that if you have a good business continuity program within your organization, and you have a qualified professional to lead or to prepare your organization in business continuity, within the business continuity program, there's this small portion that is called crisis management.
Mhm.
And within the crisis management is where you take the time to ensure that the top management is aware of the risks of the organization and they're capable of responding to the media, and that involves exercises and drills and whatnot on how to respond to the media. Now, we're all human, we all make mistakes, and it's very hard, and you have to put in, in the place of this person who is being bombarded by this amount of media and asking the same questions again and again, and at the same time, they have in their shoulders the responsibility of the whole organization.
Mhm.
So you have to be empathic for that, and they have to be empathic to the needs of the people. So if you make a mistake, just, I'm not sure, I made a mistake, I will get back to you.
Mhm.
And I think people respond um, very well when they see the humanity in this person. But those are things that you need to exercise, those are things that you need to prepare this person about. And within the business continuity program, that is when you address the arrogance or whatnot of those managers. It's not when the emergency is in place, because then it's not going to work. You should have done that beforehand.
Thank you for adding to that. And before I take any other question, if there's any, I want to quickly add this. As professionals that we are, as auditors that we are, as people that develop management systems as we are, we will be able to add more value to organizations to helping them make objective decisions. And how do they make objective decisions? We have to set KPIs, which we all know as key performance indicators, within the management system, whatever management system it is. Because it's through those KPIs that you can objectively measure if they are meeting the targets and objectives or not. You have to collect data. You have to make sure as possible, as humanly possible, to eliminate all forms of human errors when you are collecting the data, because the raw data collected is as good as the data analyzed. So you have to do that. You have to incorporate that, and you have to measure those KPIs. You have to analyze those KPIs. You have to report those KPIs. When you do that, you are given and you are empowering that organization to make an objective decision. So it's based on numbers, because there's a good saying that if it's not measured, it cannot be managed. So for you to be able to do an effective work for any organization, you need to inject KPIs. And what we have observed as an organization is that most organizations now, they are watching the quality of their management system. So for you not to lose that client that you currently have, try and do that. There's huge emphasis on statistics now. Huge emphasis on the role statistics plays. And that is, by the way, based on our observation, that was why Obama was able to transition. I'm not here to speak for Obama by any way. I'm not here for political reasons. But that was how the use of science was how he was able to move US from a deep recession to a better place. They are not still out of the recession, but they've moved from that deep end of the recession to a better place today. Science interjects KPIs, interjects analysis, statistical analysis into your management system. And by so doing, you add value to the organization. Any other question?
What do we think will be the
OI. Yeah.
Yes. And then, what do you think will be the future trend? If, for example, organizations continue to review their quality management systems, and because the way things are, concerned with the standards, I mean, it will be constantly reviewed, clauses will be changed, and new requirements will come into play. How do you think that will affect OI?
Well, it's still, if I'm understanding your question, because of changes in the standards,
Yes, management systems.
how would the,
Because the correlation between management systems quality
yeah.
and organizational integrity, which we've been shown graphically, which of course I accept. If, for example, there are reviews, these standards are being reviewed, well, every 5 years or 10 years by the technical committees of various standards, and new requirements are being brought into play. For example, the 27001, for example, risk management, the current one, the 2013 version, risk management is very, very paramount in that, very well enhanced compared to the old one standard. How do you see this affecting organizational integrity in terms of organization trying to meet costs of the implications of this?
There's what we call risk prioritization. You have to lay emphasis more in your highest risk exposure. If we have, just as an analogy here, if we have maybe a 7-foot guy who is probably 300 pounds, and maybe a 5 feet and maybe a 4 feet, and I'm being asked to contend with any of them in a boxing encounter. My risk is highest here. Is the inverse of what we need to do. I would rather go to the 4-foot guy because I know it's easier to tackle, right? So that's the inverse. So in case of organization, you go to the 7-footer guy because that's your highest risk. Because when that turns into an incident, it is a hazard. So when it turns into an incident, you would get a higher loss versus the lower loss. So that's place your emphasis on the higher risks. Then you go down the line. The way, from my experience, the way the law works and the enforcement and the consequences in terms of penalties is that they don't expect you to meet those obligations 100%. Because if a company that is turning in a revenue or a profit of $1 million, they don't expect you to implement a $5 million project within a year, because the company will crumble. But they want to see that you have a plan in place, that maybe over the next 5 years, probably not over the next 5 years, maybe over the next 10 years, you're able to devote portion of your profit towards this project. And at the end of that 10 years, they expect to see. So I've been told I have 5 more minutes. So they expect to see that you're able to deliver. It's all about deliverables. They want to see the commitment. They want to see that you fulfill your due diligence. And when all this is put in place, even the judge that is presiding over your case, they're all humans, will see that you've done all that is reasonably possible. And that would either probably eliminate the penalty or probably significantly lower it. By the way, the plan is next year we will be coming out with a product. Hint. We're coming out with a product. And that product, I bet you, will be one of its kind. But obviously, because of the processes, after developing the product, we have to go through copyright certification and all that good stuff that will take money, not give money, before we can go public with that product. And the plan is usually that product at first will probably be the big organizations that will be able to afford it initially as we roll it out. because of the resources that will be involved with implementing that product. So I'm just giving you that hint today. Hopefully by next year, sometime next year, we'll come out with that product. So because we want to, that's our goal. We want to increase organizational sustainability. We need to keep more businesses going so that they can employ more people. And as the world growth rate continues, population growth rate, we'll be able to have more opportunities for people to get employed. Otherwise, we'll have a bigger crisis at hand that we probably won't be able to deal with.
Just a quick follow-up question.
Thank you.
Given that management systems are constantly being revised every 5-7 years and are being improved, and there's this direct correlation between OI and management systems quality, should we expect an improvement in organizational integrity going forward because of the constant revision and improvement in standards?
That's the goal. That's what we expect to see. That's exactly what we expect to see, because the essence of improving the management system is to catch the gaps. And when we catch the gaps, it's not that we don't do anything about it. And I've seen organizations that they do the same thing. I've seen a vice president of an organization telling the HSE manager that I don't even know what we pay you for. You're an extra cost to this company. Hello? We're in 2017. You might not know what it's doing. You don't have the expertise that the guy or the lady has. But that person is there for a reason. So it's the attitude. The auditing that's the purpose of the auditing, to help us capture those gaps. And once we capture them, we should do something about it. So by so doing, that will definitely, generally what we recommend is you do internal audit every year and you do triennial external audit. So hopefully when you continue going through that same cycle, more areas of improvement are discovered, and hopefully the organization do something about it. You have a question? Yes, for lunch. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.